And if a cyber breach walked into your boardroom today, would you recognize it? Let's talk about what it is, what it looks like, and why leaders should be deeply concerned. Hold on to your seat. We'll be right back. Welcome back to CyberAlert Podcast, the podcast that keeps you ahead of the digital landscape. I'm your host, Shervin, and with me is my co-host, the formidable Cyber Girl.
Thank you so much. It is so great to be back to do another episode in our CyberAlert Podcast.
Cyber Girl, we have a good one today, and before we dive into it, I want us to take the time to be able to picture something. Think about this. Picture the face of cyber breach today. What would it look like? How can we identify what a cyber breach is? So we want to look down deep and see where persons think that it is someone with a hoodie on in the basement, someone hiding out and just keying away at the keyboard. But it could be someone who is professionally in their suit, who could be sitting right there in front of them and they will not even know. It could even be, we always talked about the person that walks into the office and they are actually just cleaning the office and someone...
Or pretending to clean.
They are pretending to clean. So what we want to do is we're going to craft a lot of the information that these persons require so that they can have some sort of excitement and they know exactly when I see the face of a cyber breach, I can recognize it right away.
I totally agree, because when I was younger, before I knew from a very young age that I wanted to do cybersecurity, and just watching different things, especially on different TV shows, like for cybersecurity, we thinking that it's a hacker with the hoodie on, the ones and zeros going down, but it's really not at all. So I'm so glad that we are here to be able to give information on what is cyber breaches and then what it looks like in the boardroom. Because oftentimes when you go into businesses, you see that it's either the cybersecurity professionals or IT managers and so forth who are only focused and who only cares about cybersecurity. And like we said before on this podcast, cybersecurity is everyone's business.
That is correct.
From the boardroom straight down. So I think it's important for us to really talk about different things that really does affect the business part when a cyber breach actually happens.
And when we look at, think about the boardroom and what happened is that you got executives, you got a lot of directors don't believe or really don't have any concern with cyber security and cyber breach as long as it is tucked out of the way. They don't want to spend the investment inside that. But there's some stuff that we will be hearing, some terms like due care, due diligence that we want to hear. And then again, they think that it is more of an IT issue or business risk, but they don't understand that it is a business risk, just the way that we look at risk between the operational risk. They're concerned about not being able to function.
A reputational risk.
Cybersecurity risk also will cause operational risk because you can't operate. And it also will be reputational risk as well, because it now, when you think about it, and if you have an organization like bank, trust, and you've heard that particular institution was breached.
And let me tell you all, I would not put my money in no bank who get breached and it's public. I'm sorry. That's just it.
So think about it, that hearing that my bank was breached, and the first thing you thought of is that, hey, my money?
My money?
Give me my money back. Say, I don't want whatever happened, but return my money back to me. So I don't care about the breach. So in this first segment, what we want to look at is that we're going to focus in and zone in on the face of cyber breach and what it looks like. And then we're going to actually go through different ways that we can help our listeners. So tell me, what do you think it is?
I think that we want to dive in and let's start with defining what is our threat. What is the modern face of a cyber breach?
Right.
What do you think?
What I think that when we look at the modern phase of a cyber breach, we are looking is no longer first, is not a hackers in the dark room. we are not actually looking at no more where we look at different threats. We are looking at DDoS.
Right.
It's a serious thing.
Very
We
serious.
also looking at it from a social media perspective, that persons are placing information out there inside the social media realm. So here it is that you are traveling and you want to post those pictures. So when you post those pictures, the first thing you find out that persons can look in the background and see exactly where you are.
And listen, as a cybersecurity professional, I do that all the time because
So-
that's something that we kind of already have in our mind. So
Right. So, and then we also think about organized crime today.
Yeah.
Like nation state actors, and they are so highly sophisticated in the way that they are doing things these days. And there are a few that already happen as well out there when we look at it. So when we look at different espionage in different ways, and we remember as we go down, we will also remind ourselves about the one with Edward Snowden and when he would
yes, I remember that.
and if you watch
remember
the
that.
movie, you will see so many different things that were going on. So when we look at it, what do we look at it from the business perspective?
So let's break it down on what it looks like. What does a cyber breach really look like in the business perspective? So a hacker comes in and attacks your company, business, whether it's small or a large business. And there are different cyber attacks that they normally use. So one of them is you might see is a ransomware lockout. So all of a sudden you receive this message that said your files have been locked and you have to pay a certain amount of money in order for you to be able to unlock that file.
Right.
We often see that happening a lot. And then
Right.
we look at like a data heist where millions of customers' records, including their sensitive personally identified information, so PII, like their names, their addresses, social security numbers, your birthdays, so much more. And even your, like you said, you might think your name is not important, but your name hosts every other thing that
So
you
about
need.
right. I think about it is that if we know that inside one country they use the social security numbers and for everything. And we know that home here in the Bahamas, we call it the national insurance number,
Right.
which is our social security number.
Right.
And we do know that if someone have a hold of that, they could actually impersonate you and be able to have access probably to whatever contribution that you were putting in.
So identity
All those years.
theft.
Yes.
That's what we see. And that's important too, because you really have to realize how important it is protecting things
Yep.
like your driver's license, your NIB, like you mentioned. And then another thing that I think that oftentimes businesses don't think about, but is important, is supply chain attack. Now, there are different ways. Maybe it'll happen where an attack happened to that particular vendor that you use and your system shut down. Whatever tools or whatever thing that you use from that vendor, it shuts down, and now you cannot be able to access that particular thing.
And then
that affects your business continuity.
Correct, because I remember that I have an article that I wrote out there
Right.
on supply chain. And I talked a lot about, when you look at it, that it talked about the food industry. So if you think about it, if they attack the food industry, and we look in our country during the COVID time, and remember when those ships wasn't coming in, and the food was slow coming into the country, exactly kind of all of that shifting we had to do, and how uncomfortable we were when we thought about this kind of stuff. So when we think about that, this affects a lot of things. And then when we remember that, what happened at the Panama Canal when the ship took long to try to get through the canal. So imagine if that whole supply chain is affected by that, then we know that the risk of so many different things that we will go through.
Right, and if it does affect you, and this is where you seriously have to sit down and know your vendors, I find having a relationship with the vendors really helps, because now you're able to say, if you have to ask questions, you're able to go to that person and be able to talk to them and say, okay, well, what is this? Do you have this? What are ask them what their security, like their security plans, and what do they do? So definitely, we don't think about it, and we think that, okay, well, having supply chain, I can just trust somebody. And then remember, we talk about make sure that you verify first and then trust.
Right.
Just don't go trusting the vendors, and sometimes your vendors could be the same ones trying to hack you.
That's correct.
Definitely.
And I remember reading an article, and I don't exactly remember what the article was, but I've read so many articles on supply chains and even wrote one on supply chain. And I saw where that they talk about the global average cost of data breach is already inside the multi-million, billion dollars industry. We see that persons are actually making a lot of money on this thing from a cyber attack as well.
Right.
So when we look at supply chain from the perspective of when we get goods, we need stuff delivered to us, and imagine that here it is that it has been affected or even slowed down, and we're not able to get the necessary goods into the country, into the Caribbean region, into other regions, small developing countries such as ours. Then we know the kind of difficulties that we will have inside this country, and we know that the hardship that we very well could be faced with. So when we look at a cyber breach, we have to understand the criticality of it, and it actually could be what we call something dire to an entire nation, an entire population. So that's why you can look at it and say that it's a serious risk.
It is
as well.
Very serious. And knowing that everything about cyber breaches and knowing how serious it is and how important that it is for businesses or even just everyday individuals like ourselves to protect ourselves, our data, and our devices, we want to talk about like the board of directors.
Yep.
Like, this is not only an IT's manager's concern or a cybersecurity professional concern.
It is not.
But the core functionary duty for the board is to actually understand what is cyber breaches and how we can protect ourselves
because
from cyber breaches.
That's correct, because it's a significant event directly impact the company long-term stability. It impact the shareholders. It impact not only the customers, it impact the employees.
Right.
It impacts so many different things. So when you are actually looking pertaining to cyber breach, you have to manage it from sitting inside the board. No longer you try to push it away that it is not pertaining to the boardroom, is not the requirement of the boardroom, is not the risk. And you have to be able to see it, because number one, you talk about financial ruin, the cost of forensic investigation after a breach. Now that alone that can take a long time, because there are times when you have a cyber breach and you have to call in the forensic team. Sometimes you cannot even touch the system. You cannot turn on the system at all. There's so many different things that you cannot do while that forensic is going on, while they need to collect this data. The prolonged period outage would actually affect your business seriously.
Right.
And all of that. So we're talking about regulatory fines, and there are some regulatory fines. Remember that if you could be fined by GDPR, which have a really high percentage of you, and they actually fine you on your gross. It's not the net. You're getting fined on the gross, so you have to be very careful. And there have been many organizations who been fined. And then we look at reputational risk. We mentioned that before. When you look at the reputational damage that can happen to an organization, and there's so many different organizations inside, especially we heard in the U.S., will close their doors as a result of these kind of things, or a result of certain fraud or whatever it is, because reputational risk and the fines alone you would have to close the door. And I could dare to say that it could cause imprisonment as well.
Yeah.
So you have to be very careful on what is going on, and you could have a whole operation collapse in the middle of this. So these are some of the things that they have to understand. That's why we mentioned due diligence, due care, and due diligence is so important.
It is.
And all of that.
It is. And then we can even dive in deeper into what due diligence and due care, and think of them as two sides of the same corporate governance coin.
Yeah.
So when we look at due diligence, we think of the investigation.
Yeah.
What it is, the proactive investigative work done before a decision is made or a risk is accepted. It means actively seeking out information.
Just correct.
And then you look at insecurity, for instance, example, for the board, it means knowing the risk. You have to know your risk. And first of all, before you know your risk, you need to know your assets, like physical, digital assets. Know what you have, so that you could be able to know what are the risks for those things, and how do we have protective measures for it.
And then you have to actually look at just like how you treat regular governance. You also have to actually look at governance pertaining surrounding cybersecurity as well.
Yeah.
And then you have to realize that, look, you created the program in place, then you have executives who have to oversee that, and they ensure that all those things. But even though you create the governance, the owners still at the board level, they have to make sure that everyone is doing exactly
what they're
supposed to do. And that's why you have to have checks and balances in place.
Right. So, and that's what we were getting into, that conduct regularly comprehensive cybersecurity risk assessment.
Correct.
We always say, even with recovery, when you're testing your recovery plan, it's not a one-time thing. Any policy that you have inside a business, you have to continue testing to make sure that if something was to happen, you know that it will run smoothly, because you have certain test periods to test out any policies or anything that you have put in place. So we look at, like I said, comprehensive cyber risk assessment, understand the budget for cybersecurity. Now we know cybersecurity, dead expensive.
In fact, we realize that cybersecurity usually get zero budget.
Yeah.
Because they usually push it underneath IT. And then when they get the IT, we look at all the different systems that we have, all those corporate stuff that we have to do and all of that. So when you look at those, who are going to secure those?
That's what I'm saying. Don't add no systems and you don't have no plan to secure it. That makes zero sense.
And who will make sure that the IT people are to patch those systems, so do a regular update?
Right.
But if no one is the check and balances is not there, then as far as it's functional, the IT will say one phrase we used to say, if it is not broke, don't fix it.
And we say that a lot when you code in too.
Yeah, just let it run.
Right.
Let it run. And then here it is that you have some malicious actor find some happy user, I call it, some happy user who ready to click on something because they know
seriously
that we just get a salary increase, and they want to be the first one to go past that information, or to stay excited to say that, oh, I know something you don't know. You just telling the salary increase, and that fella in the back there saying that I just know something you don't know.
Exactly.
I have access to your system.
Exactly. No, that is so serious, so serious. And then we go into due care. So the action. So what is that? The action taken or the level of prudence based on the information gathered. It's acting as a reasonable, prudent person under the circumstances. So now let's put this practically in cybersecurity. For the board level, this is the implementation. It means allocating the necessary funds for security improvements, mandating executive level security. Now, let's really stop here with the security training, because this is what runs me hot. If you receive a security training, please do it. Sometimes we think that it's not necessary, right? Because it's going to take up a lot of my time. But would you rather it take up all your time, and then when you look, you click a link and bring the whole company down?
Yep.
Let's be for real now.
Cybersecurity policy is the one policy that persons don't they don't seem to be interested in. And in fact, the reason why it is not, because there's no regulatory program in place. So guess what happened? It's not like AML. If it's not that, there's fine.
Right.
So in cybersecurity, there's no fine. There is no law in place that requires person to be able to do this, or companies, or unless they will be fined if this is not done. So when we get to the point where we can ensure that, look, if your company is not doing this annually, then we can fine you maybe $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. And when the fine increase, then you'll see that it will become like AML, where they say that anti-money laundering and all of that, say that, look here, we all need to do this right away. If not, we can get sanctioned for a lot of stuff that you do.
I think of it as education. We all go off to school, go to university, we try to take certifications, just different things, courses to help us to actually learn and understand.
Yep.
I think it goes the same route with cybersecurity. If you want to learn how to protect yourself and learn and get education on it, I think it's important to learn and take the trainings. The
Right.
same way how you will take a course is the same way for security trainings, and you can see how much you can improve when you notice things. So sometimes something simple as unusual sign in, you might see that before the training. Oh, let me click the link because it says unusual sign in. I'm scared now because hackers do play into the human's emotions, and we always have a psychology.
Right.
So they do play in human
That's correct.
emotions.
So
Yeah.
we mentioned due care and due diligence, right? And just want to make sure our listeners understand that when you look at due diligence maps out and identify all your danger zones. You need to understand where these danger zones are. You need to do the research. You need to make sure that you have all the different policies in place to just to be able to handle a lot of these different danger zones. And then we have due care, means that you spending the necessary money, you getting all the necessary stuff, you getting the program in place, you make sure that persons are following those programs. It requires you to do check balances back and forth to make sure persons are doing what they're supposed to do. And if you failure on any one of these things, very well could cost regulatory fine, different fines that you could suffer inside it. And now, when we look in our country, such as the Bahamas, we are still in the youthful stage, but we actually see a lot of things happening inside the country right now. And so hopefully we will begin to move as more rapidly inside our region, inside the whole Caribbean region, as we see a lot of things are happening as well.
I totally agree with that. And I want to put in things that we talked about, all like due diligence, due care.
Correct.
We talk about what is cyber breach. I think it's now to show you examples of what happens when you don't have due diligence or due care. So we have examples of different cyber breaches that happen, and one of them is the Data Vault Health System, the unpatched server. And in the mid-2024, Data Vault, a major healthcare provider, suffered a massive data breach affecting over 50 million patient records.
Wow.
The entry point was an unpatched server running outdated, unmonitored software. So you see old software, sometimes patches for old software don't happen anymore. So you just running something on the server, and when you look, the attacker is able to get to it. So neglect of due care / diligence, the CISO had repeatedly flagged the need for the system upgrades and automated patches in the quarterly board report. But you know what the board said? Oh, we don't care. We don't care.
Don't want to spend the money.
We don't care.
We want to hold the money. Probably in some cases, persons try to control the spending because bonuses. I didn't think about the bonuses. If we spend the money, now bonus would be smaller.
Right. And then, however, the board prioritized a short-term cost cut measure,
There we go.
delaying the necessary budget approval. So the effect, $25 million in remediation, legal defenses, and credit monitoring.
Wow.
And then we look at the organizational effect. The CEO and CISO were forced to resign. That's a massive HIPAA, like we know about HIPAA inside the healthcare.
Yeah.
So we see a massive HIPAA and state level regulatory fine were levied. So we see all of that happening. And then there's more like the global corp logistics. And we see that in late 2024, a business critical logistics network was paralyzed by a ransomware attack after an employee fell for a high sophisticated phishing emails. The actor used the stolen credentials for months to map the network before launching the final attack.
And you see again, phishing again, a happy user through email.
Right.
You have these happy users, or what should I have labeled them to be? Death clickers.
Yes,
These users
that's a good
who
one.
sit and click on an item to death and just click that to death. Click, 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 click. So we label them as death clickers.
So we see that the financial cost for this one was $40 million.
Wow.
And let's talk about what the board did. The board failed to mandate or oversee effective, frequent company-wide security awareness training.
Again, we just mentioned how
Literally.
serious security awareness training is. And we may think that it is not a big thing, but security awareness training can actually assist in a lot of these stuff.
Right.
Now, I am one who can say that it is okay to do LMS training, which one of these systems. But when you look at an in-person training with someone, and someone actually telling you the reality of what is happening, I think that is also effective, which means that you can do a combination of both annually to be able to assist. If you do one annually, do the next one, come behind and reinforce. And I believe that works well.
Right. And then last one is the undisclosed vendor risk. We talked about vendors and how you can having a vendor can be a risk. And in early 2025, FinTech innovative proprietary trading algorithm, their core intellectual property was stolen. The breach originated through a small third-party software provider with remote access to the FinTech systems.
Wow.
So neglect from the board. The FinTech's board had signed off on the contract with the vendor without any formal independent security audit or continuous monitoring clause.
Again, you see how important vendor management is. Vendor risk is a serious thing. When we look at a lot of breaches was as a result of vendor risk because we are not doing the assessment or reassessing the vendors that we are using.
Right. And now we look at the financial cost. It was $75 million in IP loss and competitive disadvantage, plus cleanup and legal fees.
Wow.
Exactly.
So when we look at these breaches and we see the massive financial cost to this company, we can actually say that we look at, we can see a pattern here. And every pattern that we saw was back at the feet of the board. Again, the board didn't do something. The board's supposed to be able to do something or put something in place. The board didn't spend the necessary money that they should have spent. The board was actually cutting back on some. Everything we saw was the board. And guess what? When we look at the board, that is governance. So we can say that their governance portion of a lot of these companies was not really working effectively because there still was some challenge inside governance.
Right.
And it would cause these breach. So we can see that. And so when we look at the neglect of the board, what do we say?
Well, for any business, right, the key takeaway is that cybersecurity is not a cost center. It is a capital expenditure in corporate survival.
Right, because you have to look at it as corporate because it is at the board, just like operational risk, just like how we look at all the different risks.
Right.
Cybersecurity is a risk.
It is.
It needs to be managed as such because when you go and you really sit down and you quantify that and all of that, whether you're going to mitigate, you're going to actually going to accept the risk, and cybersecurity is the same way. You have to put that through the risk method in order to be able to manage that effectively.
Right.
So when we look at what is going on, it is really sobering. It is sobering for us as cybersecurity professionals. It also should be sobering for companies, organizations, and it also should be sobering for the board when we look at, think about the cybersecurity and all of that and the business level priority. So it is not just an IT risk. We have to remember that. And the board has to understand that, and the executive has to understand it's not just an IT risk. It is really, it's for all of us as an organization.
Right. And then even the legal and financial consequences. And when you fail in due diligence and
right.
care, like it's no more hypothetical. Like these are real. We shared and we expressed real stories that actually happen. And these things can literally wipe out years of hard work.
That's correct.
Years of hard work.
Most definitely. And on though that this was really exciting for us and we want to continue the conversation, as we will continue the conversation and continue to bring persons, bring that awareness to the different persons and all of that, and to the public. And we just want to say that we like doing this, and we have some exciting times. And as we continue to move forward, we just want to let our public know that cybersecurity is real. It is a terrifying thing that, especially, it is not a good feeling when your company have been breached. The different things that you have to go through just to get things back to normalcy is not really good. So you will want to put in the different measures in place to ensure that you cover your company and be able to recover in the event that something happened. So with that, I will say that I am Shervin, and I enjoy having this conversation, and I'm here with
Alea, aka Cybergirl.
So it's a pleasure to bring this information to you, and we ask you to stay safe out there and stay secure.
Yes.